Hi, it's Candice with Grow Local again, and today I thought we would just touch on some seed saving. It's a little bit too early for some things, but it's a good idea to start thinking about what you'd like to save and if you should. One of the easiest things to save are your sunflowers. That kind of goes without saying. Each one of those, the center of your sunflower, is a whole bunch of little teeny tiny flowers, and that's why you see the bees crawling all over it so much, because they're pollinating it. And if they all get pollinated, you can just rub the tops off and you've got all these lovely seeds in there. And these are what you save. You can toast them and roast them and eat them. You can use them for arts and crafts, but if you're really smart, you're going to put some in a bag. Make sure that they're really, really dry though, okay? Leave them outside on a pan until you are sure that there's no moisture left in them. And then you can just store them. When you are storing seeds, one of the things I should tell you at the very beginning is make sure that your storage area is cool and dry. Warmth and moisture causes seeds to sprout. So wherever you've got them, make sure it's cool and dry. If you have concerns about drying, use paper bags. Or there are those little envelopes that you can get from the post office for coin and stuff. They work out really, really well too. If you are sure that they're really dry, you can use small jars, you can use big jars, depending on how many you're gonna save, or you can do what I do and just use plastic bags. A lot of times, because my garden's not that big and I don't need that many seeds, I just use the little dollar store plastic bags. But I make sure that these things are really, really dry before they go in, because otherwise the moisture's trapped in there and they're gonna get moldy, okay? And then they're not viable. But more on that in a bit. So, sunflower seeds, number one, soft and fuzzy. You'll know they're ready when they start to droop, because that's when they're protecting themselves. They don't want the birds to see how ripe and ready and lovely they are. And I think next I will show you lettuce. This is a dried one. This, you guys, I'm sorry, but all my little blossoms closed back up. But they kind of look like little dandelions, and they've got, on this one, it's a nice little yellow flower that you get, and they open up. When they are ready, they look a lot more like a dandelion seed head. And you see all that little white fluff. It's all attached to a seed, and it's designed to float away just like dandelions are. So with this, we'll see if it works. It's kind of windy. I don't want them all to blow away. What you're going to do is just pick off that fluff, and it's all attached to little tiny seeds. And when you pull off the fluff, you've got the seeds there. This might be a little tricky to show you. I already did some just before. Where did I put them? There. I picked some off just before you got here because I really wasn't sure how this was going to work in the wind. But this is how tiny the seeds are, okay? They're just little itty bitty things. But each one is going to grow into a new head of lettuce. So figure out how many you need. This is just off of one lettuce plant. When they bolt, they can get really tall. And like I said, they get the lovely little yellow flowers. They'll all open up. They don't always open up at the same time. So you can either go around when it's nice and dry and pick them off then, or you can just pick and choose which ones you want. Pick a branch off like this has been done. It's not actually that hard to do, you guys. But look at all the little seeds that are there. And I'm probably going to have renegades all over the garden now, because we're going to move on to the next one. My mama tried. This is anise hyssop. I'm going to throw that one at you because it's in front of me. It's got super, super little tiny seeds. I love this one. It's the one with the leaf that tastes like black licorice. Use it for flavoring drinks and stuff. I used to just grow it in pots outside of a townhouse window, because then the chickadees would come and they'd all hang onto the stems and eat all the seeds. But this isn't quite ready, but you could see inside where the seeds are just starting. And if you give it a shake, you can actually just walk around, give it a shake, the seeds fall right out. Super, super easy. They're a really, really low maintenance plant. If I remember correctly, they prefer poor soil, so you don't even have to worry about feeding them a whole lot. And again, I'm going to have so many volunteers in this little garden patch right here. It should be fun. And peas and beans, two of the most popular things to try to save. What you want to do with those is you have to wait until your vines are really dead and dry and your pods are really crisp. And you want to be able to hear them rattle. Oops, that one popped open. I'll try this again. So you can hear the pods rattling in there. That's when you open them up and you get your peas out. They're really, really wrinkly. That's a good thing because that means they're already drying out. You don't have to really worry about the moisture content in it. And you can pop it into a bag and you can save them. Now some people, peas and beans are one of the easiest ones because they don't readily cross-pollinate, which makes it easier to know what you're going to get next year. Some things do cross-pollinate, and like squashes and zucchinis, if you were to grow those in close proximity, if they cross-pollinated, your zucchini is going to be the zucchini that you want to eat this year, and your squash is going to be the squash that you want to eat this year. But if you save those seeds, next year, you might get something really weird. Might taste better, might taste off, might look really weird, but it's entirely up to you. If you want to take the chance, go for it. Sometimes it's a lot of fun. If you really, really want to get just what you grew, as in it's a specific pumpkin or a specific squash, think about it for next year because you're going to have to figure out how much space it needs away from the other things that you want to grow, or you just grow one kind of squash or one kind of zucchini so that they don't do that on you. But we can get more in depth on that at another time. Those beans that I have hanging behind me, they're not quite ready yet. They're still nice and they're kind of sticky and hairy feeling. But when the vines dry, the pods will dry right up. They're super crisp. And when you open them up, this is what the beans are like. They're hard, they're shiny, they're dried, they're ready to go. You can either save them for next year so that you've got the same kinds of beans, or you can stick them in your soup pot, your bean pot, make all sorts of wonderful things out of them. I don't know if anybody has seen what a radish does. If you let your radishes go, they get really, really bizarre looking. They almost look like rat tails or something, but that's a radish pod. Your radish will get big and huge and then it sends up flowers and you get these coming off the end. And when you open them up, you will get your seeds. See if I can get that. So that's what your radish pod looks like. That's what the seeds look like. This happens to be a French breakfast. And I love these guys. One of my faves. And I'm not opening that pod because I have to show some kids what they look like later. But there's your peas. There's your radishes. You got your beans. If you are growing spinach or beets or Swiss chard, make sure you're labeling. If you're saving seeds, make sure you're labeling them, because this isn't not ready to be saved yet piece of spinach, but we thought we'd take it and show it to you anyway. But they're little clumps of seeds. They come in clusters. So does Swiss chard. So do beets. And they all look really, really similar. So if you don't have them marked, you just might be planting what you're not expecting next year. Okay? So that's something to know too. Swiss chard, I should say too, it's a biennial. So you grow your Swiss chard the first year and you can eat it like crazy. Just cut it off at ground level. Next year it will sprout again. And if you want, you can eat it. It's not quite as flavorful the second time. And then it is going to bolt on you, and it's going to grow, and it gets ridiculously tall, and you get a multitude of seeds on it. And I have some growing against the back fence that I'll show you. Calendula, do you remember the yellow flowers that we had growing in the garden bed? They're done. They're super easy. These are the seed heads. The flower heads, that's where the flower was. You just let them completely dry, and they have bizarre looking little seeds. Some of them look like worms, some of them look like little seahorses. But those are already dried. You can just pop them in a bag, and you can save them for next year so that you've got lots of blossoms for your salads, roots for your creams, and all sorts of neat things like that. And I think I will say we'll do the chives. Remember I said the chives get blossoms? If you leave them long enough, the blossoms go like this. And you just squeeze them, roll them between your fingers, and you get all these lovely seeds. And if I remember correctly, regular chive blossoms are white, and garlic chive blossoms are pink. And I might have that backwards, and for the life of me, I'm doing a brain fart, you guys. But you'll figure it out. You'll know what you planted. And we have parsley. Parsley goes in umbels. Again, it's one of those ones that is a second year. You leave your parsley in the ground, it comes back the second year. It looks pretty nasty for most of it. But when it's dry, all you have to do is crumble and rub, and there are all your parsley seeds. Dill is much the same way, only it will go to seed the first year. Now, how about, I think we'll do the tomatoes because the wind's kicking up. So with tomatoes, you want to make sure that you are leaving your tomatoes until they are really, really ripe. Or if you've got one that's damaged, it's really nice and ripe, but an animal came by, took a chomp out of it, or it's got too much blossom end rot, or it's too deformed, you don't want to eat it for whatever reason. You can still use it. And there are a couple of ways to do it. These, you guys, I'm really sorry. I wasn't really thinking about you, and I did have tomatoes that were really, really super ripe, so I ate them. So this one isn't quite ready to do this to. Like I said, make sure it's fully developed, really ripe, almost overripe. And then you are going to take your seeds and you're going to put them, all that gel and that pulp. It's the same thing with cucumbers or melons. They all have a jelly-like substance around them, and that's a protective coating. And it's more pronounced if it's when they're just about ready. But that's a protective coating that they have on, which is why they usually get eaten and then pooped out, and then they'll grow. So what you want to do is ferment them. And all you're doing is taking all that juice and all those seeds, and you put them in the bottom of a glass jar. And when you've got as many as you want, pulp and seeds, add some water. And then you're going to let it ferment. And you're going to just leave it on the kitchen counter for 2 or 3 days, not probably any longer than that. It's going to get that fermented foamy stuff on the top, and it's going to look pretty nasty, but you can pick up the jar and you can give it a swirl a couple times a day. And you'll find at the end of the second or halfway through the third day, the viable seeds have sunk to the bottom, and all the seeds that aren't any good and all the pulp will have risen to the top, so you can scoop all that off. Then you just drain them into a sieve, rinse them really well, put them on a paper plate or a paper towel or just a towel to dry, and then package them up either in a paper bag or a plastic bag, your choice. And you've got your tomato seeds. Some people, oh, and if you have fruit flies and you drink wine, just put your little wine cover on. Some people will just take the seeds right out of the tomato and they just splooch it. That's my word. You're just splooching it on a paper towel and you just let them dry out there. And you can just leave them as is, nicely dried. Or if you don't care for that, when they are dried, you can just pop them off, put them in your paper bag or your plastic bag with a label, and you're good to go. Takes up less room. But it works really well. So you got two choices on that one. What else did I want to talk to you about? Let me see. The infamous carrots. Carrots are another one that are biennial, which means this year you grow your carrots and leave a couple in the ground. If that's a hassle for you and you can't do it that way, you can actually pull those, because you want to, and I'm thinking you want to get your whole bed redug and rejuvenated for next year and all cleaned up. You can actually take those carrots out of the garden bed that you want to save and put them in a pot of soil. Just pull them up, replant them. The greens are probably going to die off on you. Not a big deal. They're going to die anyway over the winter. But next spring, those carrots in the ground are going to send up new green growth. Only it's going to get flowers on it. And you guys have all seen the wild carrots that are growing everywhere. So you've got the white flowers, looks like this. When they get pollinated, they start to, I'll just show you this one, it's too windy. They start to look like this. They get all the seeds. It would have been out like this with all the white flowers on it. It gets pollinated. It starts to curl up and makes a pocket inside there. And they're protecting themselves, and what they actually are doing is trying to save moisture in the bottom of that pocket, because where they originated, it's really, really dry, and the seeds in the center get the moisture, they start to sprout, and when they land on the ground, they've got a better chance of growing. Not really an issue out here, but that's why they do that. And when they are all dry, you just rub them, and you get little tiny seeds like this. And those are going to be your carrot seeds. And you get a lot of carrots from one plant. I mean, it's amazing. So if you just want to save 1 or 2 carrots and tuck them in the ground someplace, that's all you have to do. You'll probably have enough to keep you happy. And they do last for a long time. And what else have I got? Those are my bags that I was showing you. So I don't need those anymore. Oh, these, you guys, are garlic bulbils. I've just pulled some off. Do you remember when we pulled the garlic up and I said if you didn't cut off the scape, you would get a ball on the top and it would grow into bulbils? That's what they look like. Mine, I've just pulled a few out of the heads because I don't think that they're quite ready yet, because there's some really skinny ones. There's some nice fat ones, but these are what I'm going to plant in a pot in the fall when I plant my regular garlic cloves. And next year these guys will still be small, but they should produce maybe a marble-sized ball of garlic, and I will save that, and the following year I'll plant it again, and that should give me a small bulb of garlic with actual cloves on it. Sometimes they go to regular size, but I am going to try it. I think it sounds like it's fun. And that's what gardening is about. It's just trying different things, seeing where you go with it. And then last time I was talking, I got told that I had forgotten to say some stuff about corn. Now, that's where my corn was. And I do have some glass corn that's kind of surprising me. I've got some tassels on it. And I have one little thing of silks. I don't know if you can see that. But that's a little thing of silk. And it's the pollen is going to fall off the tassels onto that silk. And I don't know if you guys know or even thought about it, but you see all the silks and you see how far down they go? Each one of these silks is attached to a kernel of corn. So when you get those cobs of corn and they look like they're, well, geez, there's no kernels here and there's a whole bunch missing up there, it means that the silks got damaged somehow or they did not get pollinated. I was really wondering how well I do here with mine, because the wind does come through, it blows this way, and I had 3 on the outside and 2 on the inside. The one that I had on the corner, that's actually the only one that I had that looked like it hadn't been fully pollinated. It had bare patches all over the place, but that's because the wind blows this way, which is one of the reasons why they say when you're growing corn to try to grow it in a square or a whole bunch of rows together, because it does need the wind to be pollinated. And I just thought that was kind of cool. There is one, if you go onto YouTube, there is one university that shows how to do it, where they actually put, when the ears start to come up, they put a paper bag over it and they leave it until the pollen comes out. Then they put a bag over the pollen. They come back and they cut the silks, because apparently only a few stick out this way, and if they cut them lower, then they've got more silks that are open and viable. And then they take the pollen, they dump it on, and they leave it for maybe 4 hours. And that's how they do their crossbreeding and their genetic stuff when they're doing samples. So I thought that was just kind of fun. And I think that's probably all I've got to show you today. But it is a lot of fun to try to save seeds, as long as you remember, let it dry out if it's on a vine, so that it is really ready. If it's a pumpkin, it's going to be an edible size. Big, huge, as long as you can't poke your fingernail into the skin, then it's probably ready and the seeds would be viable. Keep them in storage where it's cool and dry, okay? Doesn't matter if it's a paper bag, plastic bag, and above all else, label, label, label. Hi, it's Candice from Grow Local, and I just thought I'd show you just a couple of books here. We talked about pumpkins with the kids, and there is an absolutely brilliant book called The Story of the Pumpkin Circle. It's the story of a garden. It's the pumpkin circle. And it has, for younger kids, it has some absolutely wonderful pictures in it. It's a very easy read. It's very informative. You just won't get tired of it, and it shows you some things to do. And I have found kids really enjoy this book. That's one of the ones that they'll go back to and they'll thumb through it over and over and over again, okay? There is another one if the kids are a little bit bigger, and it's called Big City Bees. And it goes through where the bees live and where they find food and how these kids relate to them as they go through the city. Their grandpa gardens. There's a rooftop garden for a restaurant. There's a guy with bees. So it's a little more reading, but it is good, it is interesting, and it shows you that you can garden all over the place. You don't need to have a huge backyard, and you don't even need to live in the country. This is another book. This woman, her name is Sharon Lovejoy. She lives in California, so not everything is quite pertinent to where we are. Some of the insects and stuff might be confusing, but still, it's educational. And she goes through these books really, really well. There's all sorts of things, how to grow a pumpkin garden, how to do the Three Sisters garden, growing potatoes in tubs. This one's on pod furniture. There's your tub of spuds. Getting ready and how to care for your garden. All sorts of short things, but really good to know, can take it with you for your life kind of information and projects. And it's one of my favorites. She's got 2 others that go more with the stories and the projects that you can do with the kids. And for adults, or young adults, this is called Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. I love her. It's like reading poetry. She is so brilliant. You just want to get your fingers in the soil and you understand how these things work together really, really well. It's indigenous wisdom, scientific knowledge, and the teaching of plants. When she talks, she paints pictures. You can feel it. You just want to get outside and explore. And if you can look at all the little paper clips I've got in here, those are all things that I just keep going back to because I found them interesting. They're tidbits that I love sharing with kids. So an easy read, but highly educational, and I think you'd really enjoy it. The other one I have is Elliot Coleman's new organic grower. This is probably more for people that are growing bigger gardens, slightly larger scale, but it worked for me, and it's got all sorts of information in it that you'll find really, really helpful and viable, and it's organic, so you'll learn that the less expensive ways of doing things. I'm showing you this book because I used to have the 4-Season Harvest, which was my all-time favorite of his, but I lent it out and it hasn't returned yet. And it's been a couple years now, so I think I have to buy it again. But he is absolutely brilliant. He's very well known in his field. And he can get very, very technical. Some of you will like it. Some of you will skip those pages and just go to the ones that you want to see.